Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Convery, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives and stories of individuals making a meaningful impact in their careers, their communities, and beyond. Today, we have a remarkable guest with us, someone whose journey is as diverse as it is inspiring. Joining us is Chadwin Bartley, a multifaceted individual hailing from the Greater Toronto Area, Canada. Chadwin wears many hats. He's the founder of Bartley Skills Development, the brains behind ChairLinks, a seasoned athlete brand and partnership coordinator, and a skilled barber. His philosophy is simple but powerful. Everything matters, and every life experience plays a crucial role in shaping your purpose and your mission in business. Chadwin's passion for people and belief is in the golden rule that treat others as you would like to be treated, form the foundation of his approach to his life and to his business. As the founder and CEO of ChairLinks, Chadwin brings together the worlds of beauty professionals and high-profile clients, including athletes, influencers, corporations, and charities, including renowned organizations such as Canada Basketball, Toronto Argonauts, Live Nation, Jays Care Foundation, and the Peels District School Board, and more. Chadwin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me, and I'm excited to share my story and to get to know your audience as we continue to grow.
Awesome, awesome. I can't wait to get started. So we're gonna start. Let's do a few rapid fire questions first. So what are your pronouns?
He, him,
He, him. Superpower. What is your superpower?
empathy.
Empathy. Love it. Okay, so this one I always ask my guests because it's I think such an interesting perspective on what's your thoughts and what's in your head. But do you have a favorite smell?
It almost depends on what season we're in. Are we talking winter, spring, fall, or summer, you know?
Yeah, any
Um,
of those.
and yeah, so I guess the smell of spring, because it brings hope
Yeah.
that summer's on its way. Um, and the flowers blooming, the smell of spring. And
Smells me.
on the contrary to that, my least favorite smell is the smell of fall, because then it says that winter is coming, and winter's not my favorite. So, and that's back to, and back in the day, fall said to me that school's starting. So, you know what I mean? I didn't
That's
really,
so true, and the
yeah,
summer's coming to an end. Yes,
yeah,
it's funny how smells can drive feelings about other things, right?
yeah,
That's
trust me.
that's so cool. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
Uh, best compliment that I received. I would say that the best compliment I've ever received is that I care a lot.
That's
And
awesome.
that means a lot to me because I genuinely do care a lot, and that's what drives my philanthropy. And so when someone does say that to me, it shows recognition in that, and so I appreciate those compliments.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, we all have a like guilty pleasure or something that we go to, our go-to snack, let's say. What is your go-to snack?
So I'm supposed to not eat a lot of carbs,
Yeah.
and so there's a specific type of bread in Jamaica they call hardo bread, and it's I want to use the word gummy for lack of better descriptive words, but it's kind of gummy,
Okay.
chewy, and that's my guiltiest pleasure, just because you can mix and match it with so many different types of like like
Hmm.
ancillary pieces like plantains or eggs or anything you match it with, it just enhances it. And so if there's ever hardo bread in my house, I'm sure to put on at least 6 pounds because I'll go back to back with it. So
I love that. Can you get
hardo
it in
bread.
Toronto? Can you get it in Toronto?
You can, but I don't know if I want to put you on it, Brian, because I don't know if I want to put you
Yeah.
on any more pounds there.
No, 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 because I've been trying to watch that, my friend. I don't want to. But hey, maybe that's the way we do. We'll break bread sometime soon and I'll at least try it.
Absolutely, I'd love to put you on at least once at
Okay.
least.
Okay, sounds good. Um, School, what was your favorite subject?
Gym,
Gym.
gym,
It's up
gym,
there
or
with recess.
yeah, gym and recess. If recess was a subject, that's probably be where I find my A plus.
Okay.
But gym was definitely gym was definitely my favorite because that's where I was able to showcase my leadership ability the most.
Awesome. Awesome. First job. And think about this one. You can share anything as far as your first job. Sometimes people go back to their childhood. Some people say, "Oh, my first professional job." But what was your very first job?
My very first job was helping my grandparents with bringing out the goats and the cows on the farm. And I could remember like um my job was to help lead them the goats to their pasture where they're going to be eating. Um, and I think that maybe not necessarily a job where you got paid money, but it taught me a lot about just life and leadership, and it taught me a lot about the animals and how they kind of create their have their own mechanisms for remembrance, how they follow instructions, how they lead as well. And growing up on the farm for the first 8 years of my life taught me a lot about uh, patience,
Mhm.
perseverance, and just being able to understand that we're not in control of time, right? And I know I'm kind of straying a little bit, but it kind of ties back into the fact that you have to wait to cultivate and you have to wait to receive from what you planted. And because my first job was on the farm, I've learned a lot about the cycles of life and business and growth. And so I really appreciate my grandparents
Wow.
and teaching me a lot about life through that.
What a fantastic experience. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. So meaningful. If you had to pick, and this is the last of this, and then we'll get right to your story, one word, I know that's sometimes tough, but one word to describe yourself, what would you say?
Um, Persistent.
Persistent. All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump in. I know, wow, your journey is so incredible from being an athlete to a skilled barber and now a founder. Take us back to where it all started and how you kind of got to where you are today.
Well, I touch on it a bit from my first job experience, being born in Jamaica, being raised on a farm with my mom and my grandparents, and my dad having to like come to Canada and try to figure out a way of making life better for, I guess, his children. He left Jamaica and came to Canada to try to get us here for a better opportunity, which ultimately he did. Um, but I feel as if I've always had this knack for going against the grain,
Mhm.
typically trying to go against like what was laid out as a system or a way of doing things, and trying to my best to figure out how I best operate as opposed to how I best operate in a system. Um,
Mhm.
and so while I was living in Jamaica, living on the farm and doing those daily chores and activities, I've learned a lot about life through that. Fast forward to when I came to Canada at 8, I was kind of displaced from that lifestyle. And I wasn't living on a farm when I came to Canada. I was living in an apartment. And I went from having just access to a lot of space and greenery and warmth to coming to Canada and having access to a 500 square foot apartment, which now like that's a huge change and shift in perspective and
Mhm.
shift in what you're used to. Um, and so like I spent a lot of time just confined, and it, even in my mind, I felt more confined. And just in that space, I was always thinking about just the most random things, like using my imagination. My imagination didn't dwindle. It didn't get confined. It was just kind of expanding and trying to think about new ways of doing anything. Like whether that's what's the fastest way of getting down the elevator? Is it stairs or is it or getting down to the main floor of the building? Is it using the stairs or using the elevator? And trying to find different methods and all these different things while living in the building. Um, but ultimately, coming to Canada when I was 8 showed me a whole new world, a whole new way of life, way of thinking. Got into the school system, and it wasn't for me right off the bat. It just wasn't for me for whatever reason. It's not like I didn't want it to click. It just didn't click. And I found my calling on the playground where my first Canadian experience was I seen a group of guys or boys at the time when I was 8 years old trying to throw a tennis ball over the top like electrical line that ran across in our playground. and no one could do it. No one, everyone's trying to throw it over the top. There's three of them, and everyone's getting it over the bottom one. And growing up on the farm, we were always throwing rocks and just seeing who could throw things the furthest. Like whether it's a mango that fell off a tree or a lime, we're always just throwing stuff. And as soon as I got onto the playing surface and I was a new kid, they told us what they're trying to do. They told me what they were trying to do, and then they gave me the tennis ball. And in one like effortless throw, I just got it over the top. And immediately I became like the guy in the school, the athlete, the person. And I found so much like joy and acceptance in that. I just kept going in sports. So I was never doing good in math, science, or English, but at recess time or in phys ed or on sports teams, I was always the first one picked or a captain or a leader, and I excelled there. And I felt really comfortable in that environment. Um, and then fast forward, like just because I wasn't great at school, my dad, like I mentioned, came here to Canada to give us a better life and a better opportunity for success. He didn't like the fact that I gravitated to sports and entrepreneurship. He wanted me to focus more on like academics and trying to get my best to get into like a university or college. And we consistently butt heads because of that.
Yeah.
And because my grades weren't the best, ultimately, um, uh, I got kicked out of my home. Right? I guess I wasn't the standard or the child he
Mhm.
expected me to be
Mhm.
academically. And when I was 16, I was like basically forced to get a job. Well, I had a job before I got kicked out, but I was working at McDonald's. I had to use my McDonald's earnings. I bought myself a car, and I ultimately spent 3 years out of my life just back and forth on couches or family members here and there. But most of my time I spent like just sleeping in my car. And that was unbeknownst to anyone in high school because I still went to school with a smile on my face, still played sports with the best of my ability, and was still the class clown and humorous. But at the end of the day, when everybody else was going to a warm, comfortable bed and taking their daily showers and daily suppers, I was trying to figure that out just in the back of my car. And that was like my life, right? And
Wow.
so it drove me to be innovative. It drove me to be creative in how I went about sourcing money. Sometimes it wasn't always the right thing to do. It
Mhm.
wasn't morally right. Some of the things I did, I'm glad I no longer have to use my ability to be creative for negative things or for wrong things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, being on the streets really taught me a lot about perseverance, persistence, life, empathy, like who really cared about me when I was homeless. I had no
Right.
value to a lot of people. Um, so nobody cared. So a lot of the things that we do now in our charity is I think back on where I was living in the back of my car and just needing support or help from just one person. And often that one person didn't show up in my life until ultimately one person did that helped me. And I kind of vowed to myself that if I ever made it out of that car and got to a family and a home, that my goal would be to help the next person who may be sleeping in a car unbeknownst to their friends or other
Mhm.
people in their network and giving people an opportunity. And then I know this is a long, kind of drawn out answer, but fast forward now to just skipping over a few other details, fast forwarding now to because I was homeless, I had to get into the music industry. I had to work in factories, work in agencies. I did so many different things in sports, just exploring, right? But started working for Chris Smith Management when I was about 19, which is Nelly Furtado's management company, where she worked or was managed by. Um, Realized that the music industry wasn't for me. It's a very cutthroat industry.
Mhm.
My artist that I was working with at the time, he got into an incident where he got injured, and so I took a step back from the music industry. But that taught me a lot about marketing,
Mhm.
and getting an artist to market and what all the back end requirements are in order to get that person marketable and popular. And that's before like social media. That was like when Twitter first came out. And I remember bringing Twitter to the office and introducing it, and everyone's calling me crazy, like this thing will never work. But now it's gone bonkers. Uh, but then right after that, I met my wife, who was a hairdresser, And when I left the music industry, I didn't really have a direction. I had no education. All I had were these like soft or maybe some hard skills. No, I had no hard skills. I had just soft skills,
Yeah.
maybe networking. But once I met my wife, I said, "Let me help you in your business," and I started helping her in the business of hairstyling and the beauty industry. And then ultimately, as she kind of got busier, I decided to learn how to cut hair. My mom was like, "Why don't you just go ahead and learn how to cut and help your wife in
Yeah.
business?" And that's when I got my first hard skill, which was barbering. And at that point, I was around 23, 24, a late bloomer to the industry. But now I had something tangible that I could focus in on and like isolate and build a brand around it and solve problems within an industry. And because I was like tunnel vision and focused in barbering, I was able to move very fast along with my wife, and we grew a business in
It's
Brampton,
amazing.
and we were able to sell it for six figures and buy real estate and do all these other amazing things. But a lot of how we built strategically built our business CB squared was through all the trials and the tribulations that I had endured from the moment I was on that farm to the moment I was homeless to now ultimately owning this business. The skills came from that. So everything, and that's where everything matters comes from. Like I would have never been able to build the
Yeah.
business and made it become anything lest I had learned and gone through those experiences that ultimately helped that business to grow. So here we are.
Wow. Wow. What a story. Wow. Oh my gosh. You need to write a book.
I've heard that, but again, I can't focus for more than 20 minutes, so maybe one.
Okay. Maybe we could take that as another podcast.
Yeah, maybe.
So talk to us. Talk to us about Bartley Skills Development Program. I know it's got a lot of different programming to it. But you're truly revolutionizing the possibilities I know for job seekers that are facing barriers, which is true to my heart too on this entry and letting people get that opportunity to get into different types of work and things that they're passionate about, like you. How did it all really start? I know you talked about the starting the business with your wife, but then how did this Bartley Skills Development Program take off from there?
Yeah, for sure. So, um, one of the strategies that we had to employ while building the business was how do we train and retain staff in the beauty industry? It was very challenging. A lot of barbers and hairstylists like to learn and then go open up their own practice. And
Yeah.
so, in order to keep someone for, let's say, a year or a year and a half, 2 years to make it viable or valuable to have a staff in your business, you need them to stay longer than 6 months. So we thought the best way to keep someone was to train them. So those almost selfishly, it's like that was my thought process while I was just starting up my business. Like we have to train people in order to keep them longer. But as that started happening, we started training these people. We started realizing like this is more than just training and helping us to build a business. This is actually impacting their lives. And these are people who, after you teach them these skills, moving forward long term, they're always going to have this ability to go anywhere in the world, find a job, network, have a skill that they could call a hard skill that they could always fall back on in the case that life happens, which life happens. And they'll never, they'll always be able to be resourceful in society because they have a skill. And so we end up training about 50 to 60 barbers and hairstylists in that period of time, a lot of whom have gone on to open up their own businesses and gone on to train others and, develop their own life through barbering and hairstyling. There's certain guys I've seen them walking on the sidewalk and just asking them, "Hey, what are you doing with life?" And they'll tell me that right now I'm just doing graphic design, but I don't know. But I'm like, "Oh, so you have an art background almost." And then we pulled him in, and now like he's one of the best barbers in the city because he has an art background and a graphics background, which naturally transitions into being able to like
Absolutely.
see contrast and gradients, which you need in barbering, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Transferable skills.
Transferable skills. And then two, what I kind of understood from my time working in the music industry is that I had no hard skill, like something that whether technology comes in and replaces a ton of other jobs, it can't easily replace. You can't easily replace a barber or a skilled trade. And so I also thought it's important for people to have something, a hard skill that is not easily replaced. And so at during the time of training kids and um, training overall, we thought that this will be good long term if we could kind of open a school and teach more. But right during the pandemic, as we were training kids, we went to local high schools to introduce kids to the trades in 2016, 17, 18. A lunchtime program we called the Cuts program that
Hmm.
introduced kids to barbering and hairstyling. And then during the 2020 pandemic, and we had a lot more downtime, and we thought, okay, now we need to pivot because, like, obviously the government could just shut us down anytime. We need to find another way, another avenue in finding an income. We thought, well, what was going on in the industry is that people want to learn, but it was so expensive to learn. So we thought, why don't we find a way by by reaching out to potential corporate partners to provide at least the introductory training and skills and equipment to students or to especially minorities at the time who needed to learn a skill so they could ultimately go into school, but going to school being able to already cut so they could subsidize their education with the skills that they already have.
Very
So
smart.
working in your basement, working in your garage, you're making 20 bucks a cut, but now you could save to go to school to get a formal like licensing and go through that process, right? And so we started that and we started training. We trained about 25 kids for free. A ton of them now have opened their own businesses or are currently working in barbershops. And so that's kind of how it all started and how we how we've expanded is understanding like the holistic approach to helping someone requires us to also maybe feed them, right? Like some people come into our programs, they have no skill and they're hungry. So how do we get these kids fed?
Yep.
Or they'll come in and barbering is their only thing they're doing. How do we keep the body moving, physically active? And we partner with the MLIC, and now we have like drop-in basketball nights or drop-in hockey, introduce them to new sports. Because one thing I understood from being in sport is there's so many different components to sports. A defenseman has to see the game differently from a forward and from the goalie, but all see it the same game, but from a different approach. So because you have to see the game from a different approach in any position that you're playing on any sports team, it's the same with life. You also have to adapt different components of life to make whatever you're focused in on um, more attainable. And so by doing this, by adding sports to our overall program offering, we're also helping barbers to become better team players, right? So
Yep.
when they do go on the barber floor, they understand that this person's playing their role, that person's playing their role, I'm playing my role, but we're all still collectively one team, which means if that person's finished is still cutting and there's hair on the floor, you could sweep because
Yep.
overall it makes the barbershop or the salon look a lot more appealing. So long answer again, and let me know if I need to
No.
condense these answers, Brian, because I am
No,
rambling a
no,
little
no,
bit.
no. This is great. This is you're doing right. No, it's wonderful. I mean, it's interesting too, because when you were talking about the idea of, everyone kind of knowing their role, but also, chipping in the teamwork and sort of that environment. I think it's super helpful that you're also teaching people that because sometimes you can be, in this case, the best barber, but to run a shop, you need to be the best leader, right? And sometimes that's a different person. Now I'm going to use this example because I used to always talk about this scenario when it came to a mechanic shop where the mechanic might be great at fixing my car, but when they have to run the shop, it's either out of their wheelhouse or they might need some training to actually get to that to be better at it. So the fact that you're offering and you have that idea already, it's a wonderful thing. So you got the Bartley Skills Development Program. Can you talk about what ChairLinks is then?
Yeah, and so I'm gonna loop it in a bit.
Yeah,
So along with the Bartley Skills Development Program, we started offering uh, lunchtime and after school programs for kids in need in local elementary and high schools where we understand how expensive it is for a family of four, let's say, to get their hair done, right? It's super expensive. So what we thought was, how about we go in and we subsidize hair services or just do hair services for free, um, which will help offset some of the cost, but also help barbers in local communities to network and be able to go in and become micro mentors, right? But now I'm going to tie the ChairLinks piece into this. So ChairLinks, another platform, our platform that was birthed out of the pandemic, when we're thinking about what are we going to do now that the government shut us down, and how are we going to move forward? We have to sell all of our assets to survive. We thought, okay, there's two main things that we noticed as we own this business for 10 years. We noticed that we always had a vacant chair or chairs, and we always we always desired to work outside of the salon, but we didn't know how to.
Okay.
So we thought, why don't we like build a platform that allows barbers and hairstylists to kind of rent vacant chairs in any salon they want anywhere in the world. So we thought that's a decent idea, right? So we started
Yeah.
going through that motion and realized like, though very good as a vertical, it won't be ready until we first help barbers to find new places to work, because now that'll attract them to our platform. Then they could go to the other vertical, which is finding chairs and
Gotcha.
whatnot, right? So then we started saying, let's build a platform that helps athletes, influencers, corporate activations source vetted barbers and hairstylists to said, you know, places where they need them. So an athlete, if you could think about a basketball player, for example, he's going to potentially 30 different cities each year.
Yeah.
How do you find a barber in 30 different cities? You're just going to go out there and randomly select someone. You don't know if this person aligns to your missions, your visions, and your values. So maybe if there's a platform that's centralized to help you to source and vet these people, then they'll come on and get more, more, more work, let's say,
Yeah.
right? And then we thought this platform then could be used for charities. For let's say, for instance, Brian is a barber and he's cutting hair, but now he wants to go into the community and do a hair for self-esteem haircut, right? He could fundraise maybe $2 from every one of his clients. Instead of taking all the $5 tip, you could take two of that $5 and add it up so that you go service one school in your local area.
Wow.
So that's where ChairLinks now will be the scheduling and fundraising arm to the Bartley Skills Development Program that helps us to impact within the school system, right? So
Wow.
we'll be recruiting barbers and barbers and salons in local areas to help out local elementary and high schools and the students in need there.
Wow. Such amazing thought and such a need for what we need today, with what you're offering. I can imagine, like, I know I am, but I imagine our listeners here are listening to this whole thing and thinking, this is incredible. I've maybe been struggling with like, what is my purpose? What do I want to do? And sometimes we get pushed in a direction we don't want to be pushed in. But how about if someone listening to this podcast wants to get involved in your, I'll call it movement, how can they take advantage of your programs and learn more?
Well, learning more, you could go on visit our website. Naturally, everyone has a website now. So,
Yeah.
if you want to be able to donate or just to add like a 5-star review on Google or share within your social media circles, all of our links will be on our website. But also to maybe just encouraging your local service provider to try to do this. Like, I don't care if people copy. I don't care if people just go out and start their own programmings. Like, I'm not here to launch an idea or an initiative and keep it to myself. Like, if this resonates with other people, do it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
actually encouraging you to copy, because by copying, more people, specifically this method, more people will be serviced, more people have a network, a community, more people will have opportunities to grow if these kind of systems or processes are copied. So I think just sharing it with the people who you know in your network will be very effective.
Awesome. Thank you. I talked about it in an introduction. Your golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, is a guiding principle for you. How does that philosophy manifest in your daily interactions, both professionally and personally?
Well, naturally, I know how I want to feel. I know how I want to go into work. I know how I want to drive on my local street. I know how I want to personally feel safe in my community. And so I try my best when I'm driving to not to speed or not to break the rules of the road. And I also expect people to do the same thing because I have three children in my car, and I wouldn't want someone to get into an accident or, end up hurt because of you not treating others as you would like to be treated. So because I know I need those things on the road, for example, I'm
Yeah,
making sure that I'm abiding by those on the road. And I think it's just the things that work best are the things that have less moving parts and are less complicated. And that is so basic.
it's
Anyone
true
could
though.
follow. My 6-year-old could follow that. Like, do you like getting teased? Okay, great. Don't tease, right?
Right.
Do you like feeling hurt? Okay, so don't hurt. Because if
Right.
you don't like it, what makes you feel like the other person who you're hurting is going to like that? And that's very basic. It takes no algorithms, it takes no formal education, it takes no degree to understand that basic principle. And I think the day you die, if you apply that principle, um, it it will be impactful and helpful in people's lives.
Absolutely. And I think, today, like there's a lot of people that I think could hear that message and take it more to heart. And even like you said, and through simple ways of acting with people or supporting others. I don't know, sometimes I feel people are on this mission or vision or whatever just for themselves. But when you really take that to heart, like the examples you gave, it's something that will help us all, I think, to just be a little bit more human in this world.
100%. No, I,
Yeah.
I believe that wholeheartedly. And um, I'm getting these perspectives. I spent a lot of time alone in my car, and I just thought these things through. I just processed these things. Like, if someone just felt this way or showed enough empathy to feel this way,
Yeah.
it would drive you to say, I want to help make a change.
Yep.
But far too often we just think about like our immediate family, our immediate self, our immediate gratification and results, that we don't put ourselves in other people's positions and see how we could help to create solutions to problems. And like it's a little bit of a secret, but if your ultimate goal is to be rich or to have like money, that's actually the secret. Like,
Yeah.
if you
No,
solve problems.
it's such a great life lesson. My God, it's so crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Feeling like you belong is so important to one's growth, and we know our differences are our strengths. Could you share a little bit of what does diversity and inclusion mean to you as a leader?
Yeah, it means that everyone has a space to be involved, an opportunity to share, and it also means that whatever it is that you're working in or on has the maximum capacity to grow,
Mm,
because everyone brings something so unique and so different to the table. Like, I will bring my perspective of the farm that
right.
someone who's never lived on a farm would never have thought about, right? Because they've never experienced that. Or I'll hire someone who's 30 years older than me because they're 30 years older than me with 30 years more of experience. If you're female, whatever the thing is, right? They're adding to you or adding to the organization something that you personally don't have. And that is a difference between you being very successful or just being mediocre and having just a business or a service. Just because think about think about think about it this way. You're making Thanksgiving dinner with one recipe, just salt. It won't taste as good if you're making Thanksgiving dinner with paprika or black pepper or cayenne pepper or whatever the other
Yeah,
seasonings are. And that's what brings the richness and the flavors together. It's just different seasonings. And if we look at humanity and different people as seasonings, then everything becomes more delicious with better and more seasoning.
I love that. I love that. You gotta quote that. That's awesome. It's a good one. No, totally agree. Totally agree. I think it's those that are not involved in inviting others to the table that don't look like them are missing out on a lot of life and a lot of innovation and a lot of tasty turkey dinners.
Exactly right.
So the audience for this podcast is a lot of young professionals, right? And I know listening to you, this is such an inspiration, and I'm sure they're taking away so much great ideas. What advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs, looking to start to maybe their own charitable programs or business? Any thoughts around, some tidbits on how to get started?
You get started with whatever you have, with whoever you have, wherever you are. And
Yeah,
don't don't think that you have to have it all together in high school before you could get it started, or don't think you need to have everything figured out before you could get started. Um, go out there and make mistakes. Go out and get 1,000 jobs, like as many jobs as possible. Not 1,000, that's a little lot, but go out there and work in retail. Learn the system of retail. Work in a restaurant. Learn the system of restaurateurs. Work in community services. And what you're doing is like you're almost doing a discovery survey of
yeah,
yourself. You're finding your likes, your dislikes. Um, you're even seeing where you best fit in certain organizations or situations, and you're able now to kind of reflect on your experiences and say, I really love the way that working at McDonald's made me feel when I was given that ice cream cone to that young boy or girl.
yeah,
And then in that circumstance or situation, you're realizing like, I think that feeling was because I cared. And now you could kind of boil it down to maybe I should get into philanthropy, or maybe I should start working in community, because that's the feeling that you get when you work in these environments. Or on the opposite spectrum of working at McDonald's, I just love the fact that I was able to upsell those fries or upsell the drink from medium to a large. Now you know, okay, maybe I should just get into sales because
yeah,
that feeling made me feel really good. And all you're doing is exploring, and it's never too late. It's like if you're 25 and you haven't made it, you like that or made it to what you thought making
yeah.
it is, it doesn't mean it's over. Like it just means you are not ready as yet. And I always use the mango tree as an example. Um, you plant a mango seed and you don't see any mangoes for the first 5 to 6 years. The mango tree is not dead. It's just not its season. It's not its time yet. But still, every year it grows and it grows. It buds, but nothing comes until like the fifth or the sixth year, and boom. When you see the amount of mangoes that that tree provides, you'll be shocked. And I think if you look at yourself as that mango tree, you want to experience it. You want to experience it, and then ultimately you're gonna just provide mangoes for a whole community.
That's awesome. Thank you. This is so great. I love this. Let's see, I know you're focused on business, but also creating synergies that help brand and share meaningful stories. And, I'm a big storyteller. That's why I do this podcast and then host people like yourselves to share these stories. Can you maybe talk about a story where that power of storytelling played a pivotal role in shaping the narrative of a brand or initiative that maybe you were involved in?
Yeah, there's so many of them, but one that hits closest to home for me, and I think this kind of drives a part of a lot of the reason why we started a few of our initiatives was when we had our salon, we had a situation where a teacher came in and she was sitting down getting her hair done. And then she started sharing a story about a young girl who was contemplating committing suicide.
Mm,
And the reason she was doing that was because she was getting teased at school because her hair wasn't done, right? So she'll go to school with a hood on or her bonnet or just a hat because her mom couldn't afford the hair services. So to get the braids or whatever the service she wanted was maybe $80 plus, and the mom had four other daughters. And so if you do 80 times four or 100 times four, $400, that's like a mortgage or groceries.
yeah.
So the mom chose groceries over getting her daughter's hair done. And that was almost to the detriment of the daughter because now she went to school feeling insecure. The teacher was mentioning how she didn't even want to raise her hand in class because she didn't want the attention on her.
Mm,
And so we decided to step up and provide her family with free hair services. And from the teacher's recollection, she was mentioning to us that the student transformed. Like she's walking around school with no hood, no hat, engaged in class, staying in class longer. And that really that really
Wow.
set something off in me. Like I cannot believe that something as simple as a free $80 service could transform someone's life that drastically.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
because of that, I thought this is not an isolated incident. How many more are like this? How many more kids are not going to school or not putting their hands up in class? They have probably brilliant ideas, but are ashamed to put their hand up because of how they look. And that story specifically really was the root to why we do what we do in regards to the Hair for Self-Esteem initiative.
I love that. The Hair for Self-Esteem initiative. What a powerful story that was, man. Wow. Yeah. And and you think about it on scale and how that can just turn someone's life around.
Oh, 100%, Brian. You would never go to a job interview without that slick looking comb over that you got there and that George Steinbrenner shave that you got going on. Like that's like you got the Yankee look right now. You know that New York Yankees clean shave. You got that look, and I know you wouldn't go to a job interview without this look. And as humans, if we see someone come into a job interview without that clean look, we're gonna judge them as inadequate or just not the people for the job. Like, and so it's very important that we start to look at image and
Mhm.
how people upkeep their image as something that's really impactful, not just to like opportunities in the economy, but also for their mental health and their mental well-being.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, wow, this has been like for me too, I'm just like on the edge of my seat. It's like a shot in the arm of Chadwin that's been like, all right, let's think about this. Let's do this differently. It's
Yeah,
so you're so inspiring. I really, really, really appreciate how much you're sharing here. But is
thanks,
there
Brian.
anything that I have not maybe asked or talked about that you wanted to share for the listeners and people that might be tuning in today? Maybe in those moments of, coming out of high school, not sure. I mean, I don't know many people coming out of high school that have it figured out, but like any other things you wanted to share with the listeners can be anything. Happy to open up the floor
Yeah,
and yeah, let you go ahead.
no, well, you did some thorough research, so you kind of covered the core pieces of what I'm currently working on and working in.
I'm a good
But
recruiter. That's why I stay
you
in
are a good
talent.
recruiter, must say. But I just think to just I touched on what it is for young entrepreneurs who are kind of going into their career, trying to figuring it out, just going out there and just throwing as many things to the wall as possible and seeing what sticks, but also to the people who are in power or in authority to make decisions, like give people a chance. Like
Yeah,
don't make the requirements so stringent that they don't get an opportunity to even explore. And if they're in a position to like grow, don't give up on them quickly.
yeah,
Like help. I became a better football player when I came out of high school. And I played semi-pro 2 years after high school. I became such a better football player because the game slowed down for me. Like I started understanding more. What my coach said to me 4 years prior finally started making sense 4 years later. So maybe all that person needs is just
time.
4 more months, just a
Yeah,
little bit more time. And
yeah,
once it clicks, you're gonna have a magician on your hand. So I guess just be more patient with people, give more access, give more opportunity. The people who are in certain powers don't gatekeep, like allow people to explore who they are. And you know we, we all have it, we all have an innate ability to create, we all have the entrepreneurship spirit in us, some more than others obviously, but ultimately we need time and space to explore that. And I just think people need to be a little bit more patient, and give more opportunities.
absolutely. I 150% agree with you there. I mean, it is give those opportunities, have patience, great advice and thoughts. First of all, huge thank you. This has been so much fun and so intriguing and interesting. I really appreciate you so much for joining me on the Coffee with Convery podcast, and thanks for being such a wonderful guest.
No problem, Brian. And I think I want to let the audience know that Brian takes his coffee black, which is a sign, which is kind of great things, and a simple but thoughtful and uh very attentive to detail man. Because if you really want to taste coffee, you got to taste coffee black.
That's right. I agree with that too. See? All right. So we again, thanks again, Chadwin. It's been amazing getting to know you better, and thanks for being a part of the show.
I appreciate you, Brian. Anytime, pal. Good luck
Thank
to
you.
all the
Thanks.
listeners out there.
Thank you so much. And so for the listeners, if you liked what you heard today, please share this podcast with your network on Spotify. Give us a rating. Also, you can follow Coffee with Convery on Instagram, where we feature all of our shows. This has been Coffee with Convery, and until next time, please stay well.